Welcome once again to the Credit Bank Small Business Spotlight, where we put the spotlight on inspiring business owners. We're going to learn their stories, and they're also going to share what drives their success. This episode is brought to you by Credit Bank, where you can get up to $500,000 in working capital with monthly payments in less time it takes you to drive to the bank. I'm your host, Irv Cruz, and today I am joined by an amazing individual. I am joined by Mr. John Poillucci. Did I say that correctly?
I like it. It sounds
Yes,
good to me.
I had to throw that inflection in there.
Yeah, you got that.
Yeah, John Poillucci. He is the owner and founding architect of Space House Architecture LLC. You also go by Space House Studio, correct?
That's right. Yeah, my website name is spacehousestudio.com. So hoping to cover a lot of bases with that, widen the horizons.
Well, John, welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have you here today. Want to start off by asking you this: what inspired the launch of Space House, and how did your it says here your AIA/NCAR path shape the ethos of Space House Studio?
Yes, I like it. So yeah, it's I'm very fortunate to have started this business, and I think it was just me chasing a dream, honestly. I think from a very young age, I've always wanted to be an architect, and thinking back to family parties when you have my folks asking, John, what do you want to do when you grow up? And then one of my default answers was architect, among many. I would totally be an astronaut or a musician or something like that, but my life led me to be an architect, and I think the moment that happened was my first year of college. I went to a liberal arts school in Massachusetts, where I'm from.
Okay.
And I was going for music for my first year. And that was really fun. I got to play my saxophone a whole bunch. And then at the same time, though, I found myself getting lost in the library and all the architecture books for quite some time. And I was like, maybe there's something here. So after my first semester, I toured a college in Boston. I went to college there for, that would have been 6.5 years. As when that happens in architecture school, a lot is usually a bit longer. Worked in the industry for a while, and then to come to my business, my wife and I were talking about our future, and I really like the idea of if I start my own business, maybe I'll have some flexibility when it comes time to have kids or maybe move around or something like that.
Right.
And so that was a big catalyst for me. And, I got into the industry with that as the end goal always. I wanted to start my own architecture firm. And but you need a lot of experience to get there. You need to know the industry, find out how other people have done it. And it got to a point where I was like, I feel ready to make that leap and still be able to provide great services for my clients. So that was the story. And that was about 3 years ago now that I started Space House, and I made that leap, and now my business has started.
Well, I find that interesting because, like, as you mentioned earlier, most kids, you ask them what they want to be when they grow up, and they're, a doctor or a fireman, a policeman, or anything other than what you chose. So as a kid, what was it specifically that drew you to architecture? I found that to be a rather unique answer when your parents asked you.
Yeah. Well, I can blame it on a few things. I think most architects you talk to, they like to draw. That's usually the biggest thing that draws them into the field.
Yep.
But I'm going to blame it on The Sims, the video game, when you you make the house and you play around it. However, I never actually played out the people's lives in the game. I just kept building the houses over and over again. So that was really good fun, and that really inspired me to just think about houses and all that. And I was always as a kid, just walking around, looking around different neighborhoods, and started thinking about how things are put together, and why the houses look like the way they do. And it's always just been in the back of my mind. It's just kind of my default speed. It's just to think about houses, and that's Space House architecture. You can do architecture of all kinds because there are people who live in all types of buildings and work and live out their lives in all kinds of buildings. And houses has always been the biggest thing for me. So I focus a lot on residential architecture. Although I've done different kinds of buildings like multifamily buildings, healthcare, commercial buildings as well. But Space House has mainly done residential design.
Okay, residential, both in the ADU space too. And how do you plan for that? If somebody already has an existing property, to build on top of that property?
Yeah, it's a great question, Irv. So I think those projects that have existing property to them, or existing buildings, that kind of thing, they're some of the most fun projects. And especially when you're working with the client that might be a family, and usually with ADUs, which are that's accessory dwelling unit.
Right.
And people know them as like in-law suites, or in Massachusetts, they call them additional dwelling units. There's all kinds of different words for different types of housing, but I look at it as it's a home, right? And you start with one home and you build another smaller one either next to it or attached to it. And it's an interesting thing to navigate because from a building code perspective, they're not too much different than a regular home. Like, you're going to have all the same parts and pieces,
Right,
usually
right.
in a smaller package, but you have living room, kitchen, bedroom, bathroom, that type of thing. And then where it gets kind of funky with the building codes is now you have two houses, and usually they're attached to each other, pretty close to each other. And then we want to think about the long-term life safety of the folks in there. So if you have a duplex, for example, it's the same idea. You want to have a rated wall between the two. So if a fire happened in one, it wouldn't pass from one to the other,
Right.
within an hour's time, usually. So that's like the biggest thing we think about code wise, but where it's really tricky is zoning code. So building code takes care of the building itself. Zoning code tells you what you can do and where you can do it.
Right.
And in some states, like I practice a lot in Oregon, and they have statewide laws that allow you to build ADUs on a lot of lots there. This is kind of ahead of the curve in the country. I look to like Massachusetts; they just had ADU laws passed just last year. It was really exciting. Any house in Massachusetts can build an ADU next to it, where other states are kind of behind, and like maybe it's one town has ADU laws, another doesn't, or what have you. So navigating that can be tricky, especially if it's a new law. It might be the first ADU that a town has built, and the building department might not know a lot about it or have to reinterpret things. So I'm always trying to guide my clients through that process and see, what housing type works for them, what the extent of it is, what it actually means, how we define those things. It can be pretty fun.
So why do you think ADUs are critical in solving today's housing crunch?
That's you're right on the money with these questions. So I think they're really essential for the housing crunch because it's such a simple thing. Like, up until now, we had different housing laws over the history of the United States, and typically, um, like our default from I'd say the founding of the union, and then up until about World War II, housing kind of existed in this space where it wasn't regulated super tight. And then
Right.
Zoning laws really came into advent, I'd say the turn of the century, so late 1800s, early 1900s, especially with the development of New York City. That's where we started to see zoning laws, that type of thing. And then I'd say after World War II, that's when we started to see single family zoning laws kind of take over, where towns will take a whole swath of land and say, this is where you can build houses, and you can build one house per lot. And there's a certain amount of space that you need to have around that house. And that's like the broad strokes. That's what we see as the housing zoning in the United States. What's interesting about ADU laws is it really unlocks that zoning. So where we might only had one house, and then you build an ADU behind it or next to it, wherever it needs to go. Now that that housing density has become twice as dense. So where there's only one household, there are now two. And then instead of needing a whole new swath of land to do that, you're taking advantage of the existing land that you have. And you're also taking advantage of the existing utilities that are already in place there,
Right.
The existing transportation system, the roads, the transit system, the buses, the trains, you name it. It's all already there and established, and we're just adding a little more density to it. And usually the neighborhoods that these ADUs are put into, they don't really feel the effect of it. It's not like this overwhelming thing. It might be just looks like a small little building in someone's backyard.
Right.
And all of a sudden you have a new home for a family, and people can get established there. And it doesn't mean that we had these ADU laws now. It doesn't mean that every single house in an area has an ADU all of a sudden, right? It's like when people elect to build them. So it's kind of gentle and takes some time, and people, get used to it. And it's not like, we had urban renewal in the 60s, for example, where we had whole swaths of land cleared And then new construction built, they're usually big, tall, concrete, ugly buildings. And then there's this whole, field of education and research on this, and like how it negatively affected a lot of people. And there's more. There's a whole conversation we can have there. But what's nice about these ADU laws is kind of gentle for the surrounding context, and people can increase density in their towns. And also, I'm seeing it as a great means to for families to come together. So people are having a tough time purchasing homes, that type of thing. So now we have things called multi-generational living, where say mom and dad move in with their kids or vice versa, and they might, they instead of living in two homes, they now live in one, and they pool their resources, and maybe they expand that home to include an ADU, and they get to experience life together and have more of a community type of feel.
Are there any laws or rules or regulations against building an ADU for the purposes of, renting it out and having it as a rental property?
Yeah, so there is in some places, and I typically see it in places where ADU laws are newer. There's typically restrictions for it has to be owner occupied, or
right. Oh, I gotcha.
maybe it has to be like someone in the owner's family. And they sometimes outright prohibit the use of these ADUs for short-term rentals. But in places where ADU laws have been around for a while, I see there's not really that many restrictions. And it's an interesting thing. There's like different schools of thought on this. Is like someone could build an ADU for just the sole purpose of short-term rental. And that can be looked at as a bad thing, right? It's like, well, that could have been used for housing, someone in the community that maybe wants to rent it out or something like that. But also, it's just an additional housing unit in your community.
Mm-hmm.
So it's also like displacing, maybe an Airbnb, like it might have been an existing home that could have been turned into an Airbnb, but
Mm-hmm.
instead now it's a new home, and that existing home stays intact and like is part of the community. So my take on it is any housing that's added into our communities is good housing. And if we can just increase our housing stock in general, that's a necessary thing to lower the demand. That's such high demand we have on housing right now. We're really in a housing deficit. And the more housing we can build, the more options we have for buyers and people really seeking home ownership.
Wonderful. And I read in your profile that you use these visualization tools to create. So walk us through your strong visualization workflow and how you help clients see their homes before they're actually built. I think that's actually pretty cool.
Yeah, it's really good fun. So it's it kind of gets to the fundamentals of what is an architect, what do we do, and then we're tasked with a lot of different things, and one of them is to act on the client's behalf and advocate for them and understand what their goals are, and build or design a building that is suited for their goals. And then to get to that, it takes a lot of listening. You want to know what the client wants.
Absolutely.
And then really hear them out, understand their personality, their lifestyle, and it's such a big investment, usually their homes, that it's very serious thing. And I take that very seriously. So when we're interpreting this information from the clients as architects, we're coming up with a design, and then we have to communicate that design back to the client. And that's usually done with things like plans and elevations. These are 2D drawings, and
right.
They're necessary. We need these for the contractor to build the home. And architects and contractors and building professionals, we can look at plans, and this is what we look at all day, and we understand if we look at a plan, what the space is going to feel like, what the end product is going to look
Mm-hmm.
like. But I see with a lot of homeowners that it might be the first time working with an architect, or maybe the first time they've seen plans, and they can be pretty tough to interpret. It's a new language you have to learn, because we see these plans and they're 2D things, but we live in a 3D world. So I really took real estate as a precedent. You look at listings now, and you can have like 3D walkthroughs, and it's really a great industry to look at for communicating what an existing home is like. In my case, we're building a new home or an addition or whatever it might be. And so what I'll do is I'll quite literally take the design and I build it on a computer, kind of like The Sims, like I was talking about.
Right, yeah.
And so,
the correlation,
a little more embellished, but it's so I build it on my computer, and I do it in such a way that it has materials added to it, and I try to do it in as much detail as possible. So the client comes to me with these conditions, and then I build it, and then I quite literally walk them through it. And we call these things renderings or visualizations. They're 3D imagery of their design, and it's built from the same model that I build the construction drawings off of. So it's like 1-to-1, like, okay, what you see is what you get. And then it's a great risk mitigator, because I don't want my clients to enter construction and not feel confident in what their end product is going to look like.
Right.
So it gives us the opportunity to look at it together and make informed decisions on what their design ought to look like. And it can be sometimes inspiring to see the space. Or I think about a case where this is actually kind of a compliment, where I had a client. It was a couple, and they had this shell, like kind of like a shed type of thing, and they wanted to build it out into a guest house. And they had it decided exactly what the design was going to be. They knew where they wanted the bedroom and the bathroom and these types of things. And I was like, "That's great. Let me model it up for you. We can see what it looks like together." And then I showed it to them. They're like, "Thank you, John, so much. We hate it."
Oh, God, really?
They were so thankful that they got the opportunity to look at it, because it was completely not what they expected.
Right.
Because when it exists in 3D space, you get to reinterpret it.
Right.
So we completely changed the design around, and we got to a point where they were really happy with it, and then they committed it to construction. So the whole goal is to leave as little to the imagination as possible. And I really like to lean on as many innovations and state-of-the-art tools as we have available to us to really make an amazing experience for my clients.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, it was about the win. You got the
yes,
win,
exactly.
win at the end. So that would lead me to my next question. What would you say is, the biggest challenge or hurdle, and equally as important, share with our listeners how you overcome those hurdles and challenges?
Yeah, I think it's communication is the number one thing. And I just came back from AIA, after my name, it's American Institute of Architects, and they have a national conference once a year, and I just came from it last week. And a big thing we were talking about there is this interesting duality. We're living in this time where we're leaning a lot on technology. We live in a digital space, and artificial intelligence is really coming to the forefront. But in this business that I'm in, it's a service-based industry. And the biggest thing is those relationships and building trust and communication. And I think, when you have these challenges that come up when, a client wants to build a building, it's a long process. It's usually a years long type of thing. And there's a lot of opportunities for challenging moments. And I think the whole way to mitigate that is building rapport with the clients and communicating with them and finding out their pain points and what seems like risks for them. Right. And understanding those early and often. And you need to be in their corner for that. And when these challenges come up, we hopefully we have talked about these things ahead of time, and have that sense of trust that we can work through those challenges together. I think that's the biggest thing, is feel like just building the trust, communicating as early and often as possible. And that's the name of the game for me.
Yeah. And and that in and of itself is what's going to, fuel and drive your passion to create on an even better scale, if I may say it that way. Yeah. Be a little bit more creative, find more innovative tools to help you do so. Take our listeners on a journey, back to the beginning. You have this dream of starting your own business. You want to build. You're an architect. You've been, messing around with it, so to speak, since you were a kid with a video game, and now you want to bring this dream to reality. I know that, when you're starting a business, it can be quite capital intensive. So how did you manage getting the financing or funding needed to launch your vision?
Yeah. So it definitely felt a little bootstrappy in the beginning, for sure.
Right.
And
it's a term that comes up a lot, John.
Yeah. I'm sure some small businesses feel that way as well. A couple. But it was a bit of savings on my part, just trying to get a steady base. And at the same time, I leaned a lot on, I was very lucky to have a spouse and family that support me in this journey. And, it was honestly, it was real scary in the beginning because, I always recommend for other architects at least, and then I think service-based professionals to have a runway to start with, right? We want to
Right.
have a pipeline getting into the business. I didn't really have that opportunity, so I just had to jump into it. And so I think having that savings, really planning for like the absolute worst that could happen,
Right.
and and understanding that that's a big risk. And in my case, I was very lucky that I was able to establish some relationships with contractors pretty early that saw that hustle in me, and I was like, I want to get out there. I want to work with you. I want to be in a supportive role for your projects. And they took a chance with me, and I felt confident that I could deliver. But as a new person that these people are working with, I could see the risk on their behalf.
Right, right.
And at the same time, though, it's they were happy to work with me, and I was I feel like I continue to have a relationship with these folks, and that really got me in the door. Is like, okay, now I've established some revenue, and then also from the start and to this day is like I really lean on like, let me say this again. I really lean on having, kind of lean operations because, as a service-based industry or a service-based business, I'm leaning like my biggest expenses are software, that kind of thing. I'm not like a factory making widgets. So,
right.
So I have some of these soft costs, but outside of that, I just try to keep my costs down as much as possible because those first few years, it's going to be feast or famine. And then, understanding that, from the start, you're able to kind of push some of that risk off and then like really get established first before you start investing in things that maybe aren't as necessary in the first couple of years, because that's when most businesses unfortunately are like doomed to fail. But then if you have that mindset that like, okay, these are the first things, the first hurdles I got to get through,
right,
then I think you're kind of setting yourself up for success there.
Oh, thank you for sharing that, John. So you're 3.5 years in, right?
Something like that, about 3 years now.
Okay. So what would you say, looking back, would be your, let's say, your proudest moment or your biggest success thus far?
That's a good question. I might answer in a couple of different ways, but I think, and I recommend every business owner do this, no matter what business you're in. But I keep a running list of kind of like my woohoo moments, like someone said something nice or whatever. So
no, that's a great thing to do, actually.
And it can be something small, like oh, thank you for doing this so quickly, or whatever. Up till like, John, this has transformed our lives, and our family's so happy with our end product, whatever it is. I keep a list of those things, and I just really collect those moments. And I think a certain type of moment that I just live for is when I work with a family and we get through being in the throes of permitting construction can be really just a lot because you're in the middle of transforming your life. Everything is changing. But then when you finally get across that finish line, you're moved in, and your family's just relishing the benefits of your new home that's built for you. It's life changing for people. So when people, my clients had that experience and they relay that back to me, go out of their way to relay that back to me, like it just fills me up, because that's the reason I do this is get people in homes and have them like spend like the place where they spend most of their lives. We spend most of our lives in our own homes,
of course.
And when that's a transformative experience for them in a positive way, that's just a fantastic thing to hear. But and I also think, however, like I was at this same conference I was talking about last week, and I'm a solopreneur type, so it's just me, and I still collaborate with a lot of engineers, contractors, that type of thing. But when you're on your own, you can be bouncing off the walls a little bit. You're second guessing yourself, the imposter syndrome, that type of thing.
Yeah.
You feel confident in what you bring to the table, but we're humans, right? And we second guess ourselves. So
that's the ego mind at work. That's second guessing.
I know it's a thing, but so yeah, at this conference it was fun because I got to reconnect with some colleagues that I haven't seen in a long time, and they were just excited for me. They were happy to see the work I'm doing and just kind of raise me up, put a little energy in me, and that was really one of my proudest moments. To because the peers stay the same, but we change, and then And peers change too, but
Yeah.
to hear like that from people that I respect in my industry, it really was an amazing experience.
Yeah. And like when you talk about collecting those little moments, and you look at them, it just kind of reaffirms your why, um, which is a wonderful thing because that's like the driving engine, is always reminding yourself of your why, and that pushes you forward. So, where is Space House headed next? Where do you see the business in the next 2 years? Any exciting growth plans or goals, lofty or otherwise, that you have in mind?
Yeah, thank you for that question. And I think in my first couple of years of establishing my business, as I really tried to right size my services for different clients to really, have a diverse group of clients. So my whole goal was I don't want to go after one or two clients, and then if one of them drops off, then that's like half my revenue, right?
Right,
And like in the first year or two of business, that's that could be fatal.
right, right.
So I focused a lot on being able to, and like this is a big process thing, is how do I provide services to clients where I could have maybe a dozen clients at the same time, and if I lost one of them, okay, that's 1/12 of my revenue, but
Right.
I can recover from that. So that my first couple years was providing services for people. That was the mindset, and I'm continuing to do that type of work. But while I was doing that, I was trying to get myself established with more developers, contractors, doing business to business type of relationships,
Okay.
and it's been slowly growing into working with developers on building multiple homes at the same time, and really trying to lean on these economies of scale to provide a product to the end consumer that's more affordable home, more attainable. And I'm always trying to really find efficiencies in construction processes to make that end product for home buyers that much more attainable, but still a beautiful, amazing product that they're going to love. So that's been the the future for Space House I'm seeing is, let's lean on innovations and efficiencies that can really unlock housing attainability for people, because we're all kind of in this crunch. We're trying to get into homes together, and
Right.
how do we make it a more diverse supply for our homeowners in the United States?
That's fantastic. Well, John, it's really been great learning about Space House and learning about your journey. And for our listeners who want to connect with you, like how would they find you?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I have my website, spacehousestudio.com. It has all that information. I have a contact page. And there's all different ways to contact me, and I'm happy to talk any way you like. I'll call you up on the phone. We can set up a Zoom call. I have an
Right.
email address. And I love communicating with folks, love connecting about just about anything in our industry or your industry. And I love to talk.
Yeah, you'll connect via carrier pigeon if you have to, if there's
Yes,
no
we'll,
other
we'll, we'll get that organized.
well, John, thank you once again for joining us today and sharing your story. And to our listeners, if you've enjoyed this inspiring spotlight, be sure to subscribe and tune in for more of the Credit Bank Small Business Spotlight series. Until next time, I'm your host, Irv Cruz. And John, thank you once again. We wish you great success in your future, and anything we can do to help, it'll be our pleasure to be able to do so. So thank you once again, my friend.
Irv, it's been a real pleasure. Thank you for your time today.
Awesome. If you enjoyed this video, click here to watch another exciting episode.